To some fancy bar tonight, and when I was out, I was buying shots for my brother, I was buying shots for my friends, I was buying shots for the pretty girls, this and that, and I literally ended up buying about 40 shots. I go to pay the tab, and I'm expecting hundreds of dollars worth of fucking drinks, and I get the tab, and it's only $4. I'm looking at the tab, and I go to the bartender, I said, man, is this a mistake? It's only $4 for 40 shots. He goes, don't worry about it, those are our prices. So I asked the guy, I said, are you the owner? And he goes, no, the owner's actually upstairs with my wife. So I paid my tab, but before I go, I was like, so what's the owner doing upstairs with your wife? And he goes, the same thing I'm doing to his business. I just got out of marriage counseling with my wife, and it didn't really go as planned. So the entire time we're out counseling, my wife is complaining to the therapist, saying that I don't love her anymore, there's no passion in our relationship, I don't make time for her, this and that, and just sobbing to the therapist. So the whole time that she's complaining to the therapist, I'm rolling my eyes, I can't stand it, and finally, the therapist cuts her off. I'm relieved that my wife stopped talking, but the therapist gets up out of his seat, walks over the table, and tells my wife to stand up. The therapist then starts to make out with my wife passionately, grabbing her butt, grabbing her waist, and I'm just sitting there like, what is going on? So then the therapist goes to me, see what I just did to your wife? She needs this minimum 3 times a week. So I look at the therapist and go, Mondays and Tuesdays I can drop her off here, but Wednesdays I actually go fishing, but you can come by the house and pick her up if you want. My girlfriend is so embarrassing, it's not even funny. So last week we were grocery shopping, and my girlfriend got caught stealing a can of plum tomatoes. Plum fucking tomatoes. So anyway, she got caught, and now she had to go to court today, so I came with her. On the way to court, she's crying at me, this and that, and I feel for her, but she's really scared. So in the courtroom, the judge asked my girlfriend, he goes, excuse me, ma'am, I understand that you stole a can of plum tomatoes. Now, how many plum tomatoes were in that can? So my girlfriend answered the judge, she says, 6, Your Honor. So the judge looks at her and goes, I'm going to sentence you to 1 night in jail for every plum tomato that you stole. My girlfriend turns to me and starts bawling her eyes out. And she's like, do something, please help me. So I look at the judge and say, Your Honor, she also stole a can of peas last week too. Today I was working at ShopRite, and some lady comes up to me and says, hey, do you know where the broccoli is? Since I do all the produce stocking there, I knew that we were out of broccoli, so I told the lady, I said, excuse me, ma'am, we're actually all out of broccoli, and she goes, okay. Literally 1 minute later, the lady comes back to me and goes, excuse me, sir, where's the broccoli? And I look at her and I said, excuse me, ma'am, I told you, we're all out. Like, there's nothing I can do. We're all out. We'll have more tomorrow. 30 seconds later, this lady comes back to me and goes, excuse me, sir, where's the broccoli? I look at this lady and just take a deep breath. I say, ma'am, do me a favor and spell cat, like in catastrophic. She goes, that's easy, C-A-T. I said, great. Do me a favor and spell dog, like dogmatic. She goes, that's even easier, D-O-G. And I said, great. I say, one last thing, ma'am. Spell fuck, like in broccoli. And she goes, there's no fucking broccoli. And I go, that's what I'm trying to tell you, lady. When my grandfather was younger, he was convicted of a crime that he didn't do, and the judge sentenced him to death row. But when it came day to kill my grandfather talked his way out of the whole situation. So when execution day came for my grandfather, there was actually 2 guys in front of him who were going to be killed first. So the guards asked the first guy who was going to be killed, they said, what do you want as your last meal? The guy says, oh, I want a big juicy steak. So they give him the steak, he eats it, and then after he eats it, the guards just kill him immediately. So the guards ask the same question to the second guy getting executed. They say, what do you want as your last meal? The guy says, oh, I want a big lobster. So they give him the lobster, he eats it, and once he eats it, they kill him. So then it came my grandfather's turn to be executed, and they ask him, what do you want to eat as your last meal? My grandfather looks at the guards and goes, I want a big bowl of strawberries. The guards look at him and go, strawberries? Those are out of season. So then my grandfather goes, don't worry about it, I don't mind waiting at all. Today at work, I was trying to call my wife, but for some reason, my phone calls weren't getting through to her, so I used one of my coworkers' phones to dial my house number and call home. So I call home, and a sweet voice answers the phone. It's my daughter. I go, hey, cutie, how you doing? She goes, hey, daddy, what's up? And I go, I'm just at work. What are you and mommy doing? She says, well, I just finished lunch, and mommy's upstairs. I go, cutie, what's mommy doing upstairs? She goes, she's with Uncle Paul. And I go, Uncle Paul? We don't have an Uncle Paul. What do you mean? She's like, yeah, she's with Uncle Paul. They're upstairs in their room. So I'm like, cutie, that doesn't sound right. So what I want you to do is I want you to leave the phone on the kitchen table, go upstairs to your mommy's room and say, hey, daddy just pulled in the driveway, and tell me what happens, all right? I did it, and like a minute later, she comes back and picks up the phone and goes, okay, daddy, I did it. And I go, okay, what happened? She goes, well, mommy came running out of her room naked, and she tripped down the stairs and bumped her head, and now she can't get up. So I was like, what about the other guy? And she goes, well, Uncle Paul tried to jump out of the window into the pool, but he missed and hit the floor. Now he won't wake up. So I was like, we don't have a pool. Then I look at the phone number and I was like, oh, sorry, wrong number.
Furbies are soulless demons that almost got my sister arrested. Storytime! For my younger followers, these are Furbies. Really popular in the 90s because you could feed them, they could learn things, they could learn to talk, and they could even move. My family has inside jokes about these because said sister had 2 Furbies in the 90s that tried to kill each other. But that's a TikTok for another time. So on the way to Disneyland for my sister's 25th birthday, my mom gives her a gift of 2 brand new Furbies. She was super excited, but we couldn't take them in the park with us, so she decided to just leave them in the trunk for the night. She and my mom have a fun-filled day, but when they get back to their car, they find a crowd with police officers. My mom very cautiously asks, "Is there a problem, officer?" "Ma'am, you need to open your trunk right now!" So she's like freaking out, but she calmly starts doing what the officer asks her, and she heads over to the trunk, where from inside she hears, "Help me! It's dark! I'm scared!" The Furbies had turned themselves on, and people thought that they were children my mom had kidnapped and thrown in a trunk.
This is why you should always sleep with your lights on. In 1991, a man named Christopher Case was found dead in his bathtub, fully clothed in the fetal position. When police interviewed his best friend Sammy, she told them about a very disturbing phone call she got from him the night before he died. On the call, he told her that the previous night he had woken up to what sounded like whispering coming from underneath his bed. When he went to look, he couldn't move. As he laid helplessly, he watched a black figure pull itself out from underneath his bed. Once it was fully upright, it reached down and began choking him until he passed out. The next morning when he came to, he felt his neck and it was swollen and bruised. And then he saw blood on his hands and he saw that there were deep, uniform incisions on each of his fingertips. As he's saying all this to Sammy and telling her how scared he is to go to bed that night, he suddenly stops and he says, "I hear whispering outside my room." Then the phone went dead.
One day I got these shoes from Target, and I got home and I started unboxing the shoes, and inside the box there was a little note. On the note it said, "Today's your lucky day, come to this address to get your prize." So automatically I was like, oh my god, David Dobrik is gonna give me Tesla, you know what I mean? I showed my brother the address and the note and everything, and we went. So we pull up and then we knock on the door and this old lady answers. She's like, "What do you want?" And then we give the note and we're like, "We found this note." And she's like, "Oh yeah, 1 second." And then she goes to get something. So the old lady comes back with like this stone and she gives it to me and she's like, "Here, keep this stone. It'll keep you safe from all the spirits." I was like, okay. So the night of, I was keeping the stone in my room, but I just could not sleep. I felt like someone was looking at me and I was really scared. Like I literally felt like someone was staring at me. I told my brother and we went back to try to give the stone back to the lady. She wasn't there, so we left it on her porch. Some way after we left this stone at this old lady's house, it gets mailed back to me. And I never gave her my address.
The Affair, a story time. So it was April 13th, 2011, the day after my 33rd birthday, when my then husband decided it would be a good idea to tell me he had been having an affair for a year. I was devastated, so I decided to tell my mom and talk to my mom and confide in my mom about it. And so my mom got super defensive and she was angry. She was almost as angry as I was, maybe angrier. And she got so defensive that she would follow him around and kind of find out where he was. And she literally stalked him. And I thought, wow, mom's coming in clutch. But then I find out 7 months later the truth. She wasn't defensive of me. She wasn't being like a good mom. She was jealous.